Hello there, it's another week and we have another interesting package of stories for you on CCTV's Global Business Africa. We have your usual mix of all the key business news stories you need to know about from all corners of the continent, from Joburg to Nairobi, Cairo, and of course Lagos, Nigeria. We've got you covered. Here's what's coming up. The Naira hits a new low despite central bank intervention. We'll have the latest details. As African countries get ready for the switch to digital transmission, we'll be looking at the challenges so far. And later on, what do you have for sale? We'll be featuring Addis Ababa's Min Aleshtere market, where anything goes. Let's start tonight in Nigeria. There's no end in sight for the Naira's fall as it continues to set record low after record low. The currency slammed into an intraday low of 184.42 to the dollar before the central bank stepped in to smoothen the slide. And even with that intervention, the Naira only recovered slightly, ending the day at 184.1. The Nigerian Stock Exchange hasn't been spared from the bloodletting either. It closed 1.8% lower in trading today. Deji Badmus has been following these events. He has this update from Lagos.
Now, it's certainly not the kind of news Nigeria's apex bank, the central bank, would like to hear. But analysts say it is not at all unexpected. The bank had devalued the Naira by 8% last Tuesday to 168 to the dollar, allowing for a target band of plus or minus 5%. But by Friday of the same week, it weakened by 2.4%, and today it closed down 2.9%. So what exactly could be driving the downward trend? Well, analysts say a number of reasons could be responsible. First off is the continued fall in oil prices and fears that foreign investors may want to pull out of local investment and would naturally demand more dollars. Some say speculative buying too could be driving this huge demand for the dollar, as people are not really setting how the new monetary policy may eventually pan out. One thing though is setting. There's a huge demand for the dollar out there, and a situation where demand is outweighing supply. This is literally the result you get. This will no doubt be worrying for the CBN, because if things continued like this, it might be forced to continue to intervene by selling off more dollars from the country's foreign reserve, which, by the way, has been seriously depleting lately. And that is surely not good news at all for the president, who is seeking re-election. Deji Badmus, CCTV, Lagos, Nigeria.
Well, of course, we're keeping a close eye on the Central Bank of Nigeria's target of 168 plus or minus 5% in the course of the week. But right now, let's move on to the World Bank. It's agreed to loan East African nations roughly $1.2 billion to improve existing infrastructure in Kenya and in Tanzania as part of efforts to boost regional integration. Now, the funds will be used to revive inland waterways on Lakes Tanganyika and Victoria, and also improve cargo handling capacity and operating efficiency in the ports of Mombasa and Dar es Salaam. The five-nation East African community seeks to package cross-border infrastructure plans to make them more attractive to private sector financiers. The European Union has already committed around $750 million to support these projects. The bloc says it needs up to $100 billion. It's a fairly large number, that, but it's spread out over the next decade to develop and expand existing infrastructure.
East Africa is one of Africa's fastest growing regions, buoyed by deepening regional integration arrangements, and has further been spurred with the discoveries of oil and gas. Thus, future growth and structural transformation is expected to be boosted by the extractive industry sector. But this will put further pressure on infrastructure.
So the World Bank will deliver on these commitments through a package of technical and financial support to develop the waterways and associated infrastructure, and to support trade-related activities. Our financial support to be engaged over the coming 2 years for these programs will be more than $1.2 billion.
The gains in efficiency are clear. Dwell times at Mombasa and Dar es Salaam have fallen from 20 to between 5 and 7 days. Equally, transit times from Mombasa and Dar es Salaam to Kigali and Bujumbura have fallen from 21 days to around 5 days.
Now, the East African Community's Heads of State Summit has been postponed indefinitely. It was supposed to happen on Sunday, but that postponement occurred because the Tanzanian President, Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, couldn't make it to Nairobi, where the meeting was supposed to take place. President Kikwete, of course, had prostate cancer. He's said to have been unable to attend because he's recovering at the moment after surgery in the United States. He said doctors had declared him cancer-free after a successful operation at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Maryland. EAC Secretary General Richard Sezibera says consultations are underway between President Uhuru Kenyatta, that's the current bloc's chairperson, and his counterparts across the region, and when the next meeting could be held. The annual UN Climate Change Conference, better known as COP20, opened on Monday in Peru. The conference serves as a meeting of the parties to the Kyoto Protocol, and it's held every year. South Africa hosted the COP17 meeting about 3 years ago. Although a treaty wasn't established to definitively curb carbon emissions, the conference did agree to establish a legally binding deal that should take effect from 2020. Now, despite it not being one of the world's biggest carbon emitters, South Africa has taken a number of steps to cut its reliance on coal, as Travis Andrews explains.
It's been 3 years since the city of Durban hosted the COP17 Climate Change Conference, amid much hope that countries from around the world can reach an agreement in limiting carbon emissions. As a largely coal-based economy, South Africa has already begun to incorporate cleaner power into the grid, including investments in sustainable energy sources like wind farms. For over 100 years, the country has relied on its coal reserves to power itself, but some believe the newer, cleaner energy will help further reduce its greenhouse gases.
Our contribution to total global emissions is only 1%. So I think irrespective of whether it's a small contribution to climate change, the problem of dependence on coal is a big issue. And so we have to lower our dependence anyway on coal. And the new energy plan does talk about that. It's looking at trying to reduce our carbon dioxide emissions at least by 30 to 40% by 2030.
The new energy plan is part of the country's broad strategy to address its power supply shortage, which includes building new nuclear power stations, solar power plants and wind farms. It's slowly beginning to wean itself off its reliance on dirty energy by going green. Coal has always been the bedrock of growing the economy.
There is not necessarily a contradiction between reducing carbon emissions and growing the economy, because if we use energy better, and we use energy more smartly, and we create new kinds of cleaner industries, we can maintain growth. At this point in time, even with a very fossil-based economy, we have no growth at all. So new innovations, new industries and so on can only help, not retard growth in the future.
But some scientists believe that more needs to be done to combat the effects climate change will have on the continent, where change of beyond 2% could have devastating effects.
Africa is one of the most vulnerable continents in terms of climate change. It's where some of the impacts are going to be felt the strongest. So any global warming above what's considered to be safe really is going to impact on the disadvantaged and the most vulnerable in Africa.
For now, South Africa can certainly claim some type of moral high ground to be seen to be doing things in shaping a cleaner and more sustainable energy future. The Climate Change Conference in Peru may be the next step of a much anticipated agreement in Paris. But here there remains a firm commitment to addressing the country's high carbon emission levels. It's a target that nobody can afford not to achieve. Travis Andrews, CCTV, Cape Town.
The markets today really are all about a commodities play in South Africa and in Nigeria. Both markets ended the day sharply low. As I mentioned a little earlier, Nigeria almost 2 percentage points lower. The benchmark top 40 index in South Africa down 2.19%. Mining stocks leading that particular decline, including, of course, Anglo American Platinum, which issued a profit warning. Its shares ended the day lower 3.36%. African countries are getting ready for the switch to digital broadcasting. We'll be looking at the glitches and the challenges and the drama around this just months ahead of the global deadline.
security is a major challenge for most African nations, yet agriculture is a backbone of these economies. But with technologies like hydroponics, there is hope of food availability all year round.
It's about 10 minutes into the hour. You're still watching Global Business Africa from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Now, let's talk about our business, broadcasting. The race is on to meet the June 2015 deadline for the switch from analog broadcasting to the digital sort in many African countries. The island nation of Madagascar is working around the clock to make sure they aren't left behind when the switchover does take place. That said, there are quite a few challenges, among them cost, which will, in this case, cost the economy about $150 million.
The island nation of Madagascar is also racing to meet the digital migration deadline. As with other African countries, the clock is ticking down for the country to make the switch from analog to digital broadcasting. In the capital, Antananarivo, the rush to meet the deadline faces some challenges. Once the migration happens, the individual users will be required to purchase a $60 decoder and pay a monthly subscription of $20 per month, a fee most say they can barely afford.
Paying monthly subscriptions poses a problem for me, especially in these times of crisis in the country. Daily food is hard enough, and we will add payment of DTT. It will be difficult for the population.
This could be a good thing, and we could see many things from abroad. We know that this is interesting, but its cost could be a hindrance because the purchasing power of Madagascar is very low.
The country has 7 months to switch over, but only 39% of households in urban areas have a television set, according to a study by the World Bank. The weak analog reception in most parts of the country has forced many to use multiple antennas for their television sets. But the Minister of Communications says the structural systems are in place and the switchover will benefit the country.
If we want to develop our country and for us to be in tune with current innovation, we must follow technology. Otherwise, we'll not be in tune with global development.
As in other countries, there is friction between government and broadcasters who have expressed dissatisfaction about how the government will support the transmission structure. The digital switch in Madagascar will cost the economy an estimated $150 million. Penina Karibe, CCTV.
Now, we're still on that subject of digital transmissions. Mali is hoping to drag its economy into the 21st century by making that switch. From banking systems to telephony, even government systems, the country is looking to create a more digitized economy if it is to be able to compete with other African nations.
Mali's Ministry of Digital Economy is pushing to create a digitized economy and catch up to other African nations. The country's digital technology is lagging behind, and that includes the switchover from analog to digital broadcasting. Mali has yet to put in place proper structures that will facilitate the digital switch to heed the global deadline of June 2015.
We must make up for lost time and make digital technology a vector and an accelerator of economic development. Today, that digital medium is the internet, mobile phones and social media, which are used by the youth. We asked of them to continue to develop this digital culture, but to also create and dream up new projects and invest themselves in this sector in order to build businesses, create jobs and keep developing the sector.
Mobile telephony is one of the key sectors the government is looking to improve. Online journalist Ibrahim Koulibaly supports a quick migration to digital technology, saying it will give citizens access to more information.
With analog, in order to create TV channels, each one must have its dedicated frequency, whereas with digital, multiple channels can be on one network. I believe this presents business opportunities for people in the media industry, whether it be written press, radio or television. The digital realm presents us with many opportunities.
Mali's economy has been showing considerable improvement since the end of the political strife in 2012. Valdi Karolsa, CCTV.
And over in Kenya, the transition to digital broadcasting has spent most of 2014 stuck in court, with 3 of the country's biggest private broadcasters suing the government over licensing of digital transmitters. Now, that case ended in the Court of Appeal, with the regulator being ordered to re-advertise the tender for a third digital signal distributor. But we've got to ask a question at this point. In a world where more and more content is consumed on demand and not on TV, was this months-long legal fight of really any use to the 3 media houses that waged it? That's a question I put to the former Information Permanent Secretary, Bitangan Demo.
They're hurting themselves, and in the process, while they're hurting themselves, they should have actually asked, what is the future of broadcast? The future of broadcast is going to be mostly online, on demand. Already, most younger people in this country have links to Netflix, to Hulu, and they are watching content that is out of this country. It is sad for me to see that happen. I would have hoped that the local content is the one that they are hiding to go and watch. But that local content is not there. We are not providing it the way these people like it. You know, we are different. The people who have been around and the people who are growing, who are the majority.
The consumers are not the ones making policy.
They want to watch everything on the tablet. The TV may not be what it used to be to us. Maybe most of us, when we want to look successful, you need to have a flat TV there and whatever. The younger generation, they don't see it as something that they want to associate with. And this is why the current broadcasters need to understand what are the needs. Actually, you need to build a predictive model. How do they play? We just talked about how do the youth read the newspaper? Yeah. They don't want to go and keep on opening page 1, 2, 3. They want just to look on whatever and what they want.
And they're also not willing to pay for it.
And they're not willing to pay for it. Meaning that the business models have changed or are changing. And when they are changing, you can't procrastinate with the old systems.
Is it realistic then, with that sort of upheaval going to happen inevitably anyway, is it realistic for government to then come to the industry and say you must have a 60-40 ratio of local content to international content?
You can't, even the government now cannot quite police it, because the moment you subscribe to freedom on internet, you are done. We must compete on good content.
With regard to Kenya's content production space, because the tax regime around content production, intellectual property production, and the licensing regime have often been described as fairly onerous. That's one reason why film producers here will argue that you've got a lot of films that go to South Africa that can be just as easily shot over here. Do we need to change our licensing system?
We tried, actually we were given most of the incentives the film industry wanted, but they also refused to create a policy framework. Government understands you through the policy or the legal framework. They did not want to be regulated. Actually, it's themselves who frustrated the law.
Regulated in what sense? What are the main issues of disagreement?
Well, we wanted to create a law and a policy around the filmmaking in this country. It is not anchored. The law that is anchored on is very archaic.
The film, the stages,
the CAP 222.
Film Stages and Plays
Act or
something
and the Plays Act, which doesn't help them. We said, let's change this, create a new policy framework, a new legal framework. We went through several sessions, but most of them did not want that. We also offered that let's provide post-production services or production services such that any new player who has no resources can utilize the resource. You remember we wanted to do something at Samia Park. Can come do their work, and then they are assisted in terms of production. They refused because some have got small production rooms which they did not want to give up. But this was going to grow them to be very big. They actually refused to accept that the government steps in to assist them.
My conversation there earlier with Bitangan Demo on the unbundling of the broadcasting industry in Kenya. Quick run through commodity prices here for you. Frankly speaking, it's all about oil still. You will recall, of course, that prices have been falling for the last 5 months or so on the benchmarks, WTI and Brent crude. You're seeing a bit of a rebound at the moment. Brent above $71 a barrel. It did fall to about 68. US crude above $68 a barrel. But remember, compared to November 27th, oil prices are still about 10% lower than where they were ever since OPEC decided to hold its output targets. Coming up next, we'll be asking you, what do you have for sale? We'll be taking you to Addis's Min Elashtera market. Anything goes over here. Definitely want to stick around for that. You're watching Global Business.
BizAsia. Asia means business.
Welcome back to the program. Let's take you to Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. It's home to one of the biggest open-air markets in Africa. And it's here that outdoor equipment, old household goods get mended, maintained, and even resold. As CCTV's Girum Chala reports from this 50-year-old market, it is playing a fairly large role in employing the youth and stimulating a bit of economic growth.
One would be excused for mistaking this for a dump site. Well, it's not. Here you find almost everything: home appliances, construction materials, and even farm inputs. They have one thing in common though: they are all used, but not useless.
What we do here is we buy and maintain different types of electronic devices. So we maintain what is our knowledge capacity and resale. And if it is beyond us, we give it to better technicians.
Here, tens of thousands eke out a living, dealing and trading in items that would ordinarily be considered worthless. Tariku, a key cutter, is one of them.
I use this job to support my parents. Though there are inconveniences, I depend on this work to support my family.
Customers of the refurbished items come from all over the country. They say this is a place where they find cheap, abundant and reliable equipment.
This is a place where you can find items that cannot be found anywhere else. Everything is given to you after serious inspection works are done. They even give after-sales maintenance services.
People across the country know this market very well. This is Min Elashtera. All the electronics items, for instance, are sold after deciding their votes and amplifiers. We have cameras, adapters, laptop chargers, and many more. And so the people come here. We also use Sunday markets to sell our items.
The market has been in existence for the past 50 years. However, people around here tell you not much has been changed in the last 5 decades. But Tariku hopes things will change for the better.
I don't have a machine to shape the keys. It would be great if I can have one. And I hope I can have a much bigger place as well.
There is a huge economic significance of such trade activities in Ethiopia. Apart from employing locals, the transaction is not too small either. On the other hand, these people save a lot of resource of the nation as they are the main actors in the reusing and recycling industry. Grumtala, CCTV, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Currencies. This is all about the Naira, really. Of course, it has, last week it was devalued by about 8%. But a question a lot of people are asking right now is the new target band, the 168 plus or minus 5%, really credible? Or are we looking forward to another devaluation somewhere down the line by the CBN? We'll keep tabs on that for you and update you if and when it happens. The Kenyan shilling, of course, still hovering around 90 shillings to the dollar. Now, on Global Business Tomorrow, here's what we're working on for tomorrow's program. Shippy is beginning mining at one of the world's biggest and richest manganese fields. It's somewhere in the middle of the Kalahari. We'll have details on that. We'll also be talking to a Kenyan entrepreneur, a 30-year-old individual whose business is fairly ripe for listing at the Kenyan bourse. That's it for this edition of Global Business. Do remember, you can send your feedback on the program to globalbusinessafrica@cctv.com. And however we're offline, you can check us out on Facebook and on Twitter. Just look for the handle @CCTV News Africa. That's it for this edition of the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ramanyan.